Now, the showers across many western areas will slowly drift their way northeastwards through the evening. They'll eventually fade away, but that's where the cloud will remain. Otherwise, plenty of clear spells for the start of the weekend. And a cool start for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Single figures fairly widely, mid-single figures in some sheltered spots. And we're looking at low teens further south. But Saturday starts off with sunny spells for many. There will still be a few showers remaining through the spine of the country, I think. Central parts of England into East Wales. Some of these showers will develop as we head into Saturday afternoon. But away from the showers, there'll still be some sunny spells, increasingly so through Sunday and Monday, and it'll feel warm in that sunshine.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the great backtrack has begun as Rishi Sunak becomes the first high-profile politician to admit that empowering scientists to scare the nation witless while allowing lockdown skeptics like me to be viciously demonised was a mistake. And tonight, the former Chancellor defended his sickening COVID mea culpa at the hustings in Norwich.
I was talking about was, having now been through it and had the experience of it, what can we learn from it? And I think government should always be trying to learn, look at what worked, what didn't, what we'd like to improve.
I'll explain why we can't let those who sat idly by while COVID restrictions destroyed our nation's health and economy get away with their despicable dereliction of duty in a special digest coming up next. Then I'll get the reaction of my superstar panel, political commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and political editor for the Sunday Mirror Nigel Nelson. As the heartbroken family of Olivia Pratt-Korbel appeal for help finding her killer, we're given yet another shocking reminder of the kind of enemy we're facing in the battle to reclaim lawless Britain's streets. Well, former Tory Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe is proposing we take the hard-line approach that Rudy Giuliani used to clean up New York streets in the 90s. She delivers a crucial briefing at 9:40. With the 25th anniversary of Princess Diana's death approaching, conspiracy theories claiming she was murdered have exploded on TikTok.
That Princess Diana was killed by the royal family. Watch till the end. This one is crazy.
The French military agency locked up and prohibited access to the files.
The conspiracy theories will never go away.
So, Lord Stevens, the man who headed the investigation into her death and even grilled Prince Charles, separates fact from fiction in a bombshell exclusive at 10:15. Is Boris Johnson right that the nation's sky-high energy bills are a price worth paying in order to defeat Putin? We'll tackle that head-on in the Media Buzz at 10. And as GBNews reveals, 60% of small boats landing on British soil are from Albania, is Priti Patel's plan to rapidly remove them enough to help solve the Channel migrant crisis? Conservative Daniel Kaczynski, former SAS trooper Phil Campion and broadcaster Narinder Kaur do battle on that in the clash coming up at 9:25. Why is there a deafening silence from the MSM and the establishment over the explosion in non-COVID excess deaths? And what's causing their alarming rise? Well, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the Oxford University, Carl Hennigan, investigates in The Outsider at 9:45. Is lefty newsreader and ardent Tory basher Emily Maitlis right to make this claim about the anti-Brexit BBC?
Put this in the context of the BBC board, where another active agent of the Conservative Party, a former Downing Street spin doctor and former advisor to BBC rival GBNews, now sits.
Oh, we're going to debate her impartiality delusion at 10:30 plus. Can the former Brexit Party turn the energy crisis into a game-changing political revolution? Reform UK's leader Richard Tice unveils his party's battle plan for the global energy war and Britain's future in Uncancelled at 10:40. Of course, we're going to have the newspaper front pages on the way for you too, and I'll crown my final Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week at 10:50. So do stay up with us tonight. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Tennis superstar Novak Djokovic is officially out of the US Open because he refuses to needlessly take a COVID vaccine. In an act of stubborn stupidity, Joe Biden's administration has continued its discriminatory vaccine rules for international tourists, leaving arguably the greatest tennis player ever banned from competing. If vaccines stop transmission, at least there would be a scientific argument behind the US government's decision. But 4 jabs Biden, who got COVID twice this month, is proof that they don't. Here's what Novak said on the matter earlier this year.
I've always represented and always supported the freedom to choose what you put into your body.
Are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player that ever picked up a racket, statistically, because you feel so strongly about this jab?
Yes.
Novak might not be competing in the US, but he's a champion of an even worthier title: bodily autonomy, self-respect, and rejecting groupthink. A special digest on Rishi Sunak's lockdown cop-out is coming up next. Then my superstar panel weigh-in. Political commentator Dominique Samuels, back from his summer holidays, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and political editor for the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. But before all of that, the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Dan. It's 6 minutes past 9. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The family of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was shot in her home in Liverpool, are appealing for the public to do the right thing to help them find the gunman. It's after police said they will not rest until they find out who killed Olivia. Merseyside detectives have also confirmed they've identified a second man involved in the shooting. They say he was with the 35-year-old suspected target. Officers are urging the gunman to surrender. Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Kameen says the workforce is working around the clock to find Olivia's killer.
I asked for the man responsible for this brutal, callous, thoughtless attack to surrender himself to the police. Unfortunately, that individual has failed to do that. But my message to him remains the same. We will not rest until we find you, and we will find you.
In that press conference, Merseyside Police also confirmed the arrest of a man and a woman following another fatal shooting in Liverpool. Council worker Ashley Dale was found with gunshot wounds in her back garden in the Old Swan neighbourhood on Sunday. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have been going head-to-head in the Tory hustings in Norwich this evening. Well, ahead of the hustings, Ms Truss visited a food factory in Norfolk. She said she'll look at doing more to help businesses with soaring energy costs if she becomes the next Prime Minister.
Well, what I will also do, if elected as Prime Minister, is look at business energy costs, because it is one of the issues holding back business. Keeping corporation tax low is also important. Reversing the national insurance rise is also important, so we get the business investment and the growth that we need.
Train drivers at another 3 firms vote for strike action in a dispute over pay. Members of ASLEF at Chiltern, Northern and Trans-Pennine Express have voted to walk out. The Department for Transport say whether union chiefs like it or not, the reforms will be made and more strikes will not change this. It comes after a wider series of strikes earlier this month, which sparked commuter disruption and left many services not running. The number of asylum claims being made in the UK are at the highest level in 20 years, leading to a record backlog of applications. New Home Office figures show at the end of June over 85,000 people had been waiting for more than 6 months for an initial decision, up 59% from last year. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
I will never forget the way those of us who criticised the government's willfully blind lockdown policy were derided as cranks, deniers and crack jobs simply because we demanded proof that the cure, in this case shutting down the country, was not worse than the cause, a relatively minor virus for most. I will also never forget the way the MSM and the scientific establishment conspired to terrify the nation, with the top politicians making those devastating decisions leading the charge.
At every step of this process, we have followed the latest scientific and medical advice.
For those people who think this is not a serious illness,
They need to take a good look. This is as scary as it gets. My mum was one of the disbelievers and she's on the next floor up from here.
It is really terrible. Our goal is to slow the spread of the virus and protect the ability of the NHS to cope.
Please do as we're asked. Wash your hands, wear your masks, keep a safe distance apart, and please, please do not go out unless you have to.
And we've told people to stay at home so that we can protect lives and protect the NHS.
Well, today, in one of the most shocking confessions by a politician in recent history, that man, the Chancellor throughout the pandemic, Rishi Sunak, admitted he supported a lockdown policy and allowed sceptics like me to be derided without one scrap of evidence, and he told us they were justified. The pathetic mea culpa to the lockdown sceptical editor of The Spectator magazine, Fraser Nelson, and the last roll of the dice in Fishy Rishi's campaign to become Prime Minister has backfired spectacularly. Why on earth would we want a Prime Minister who would be railroaded by officials and lockdown-obsessed scientists knowing the damage such a policy was going to cause? Why the hell would we want a Prime Minister who sits idly by, nodding through decisions he knows are morally wrong, simply to cling to power? And that's what Sunak admitted to. It's a shameful dereliction of duty. Let me take you through it. So he said, I wasn't allowed to talk about the trade-off. The script was not to ever acknowledge them. The script was, oh, there's no trade-off because doing this for our health is good for the economy. The script? Who the hell is writing this script? The World Health Organization? The World Economic Forum? You're the Chancellor, mate. Lead. But Sunak went on. We didn't talk at all about missed appointments or the backlog building in the NHS in a massive way. That was never part of it. And conceding the propaganda we were force-fed was a disgrace, he added, In every brief, we tried to say, let's stop the fear narrative. It was always wrong. From the beginning, I constantly said it was wrong. It was wrong to scare people like that. So whose fault was this? Well, as I've been saying for the past 2 years, it was those power-mad scientists on stage, led by the disastrous, witty Vallance and Ferguson. After keeping his mouth shut for those 2 years, Sunak, he apparently now agrees. He said in the interview, this is the problem. If you empower all these independent people, you're screwed. But then ludicrously, without any hint of irony, Sunak added, all this blaming civil servants, I hate it. We are elected to run the country, not to blame someone else. If the apparatus is not there, then we change it. Correct, Mr. Sunak? You were in a position to change this mess for 2 years. You refused, and you failed the country. As the Chancellor of lockdown, this cost of living crisis, which is actually a cost of lockdown crisis, well, it's on you. To respond now, my superstar panel. Political commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and political editor for the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Dominique Samuels, you were one of these people who was called a crack job, a crank, a conspiracy theorist, a COVID denier. And it turns out all along, Sunak, who was there at the table making all of those decisions, thought exactly what we thought, but said nothing.
And that's why we call it the Great Backtrack, because that's what it is. Politicians now know, with all of the evidence coming out against lockdowns, that it wasn't the right decision to make. And Sunak is right. We did give scientists too much power, didn't question the advice that they were giving, and didn't even seek out scientists with an alternative view. And there were plenty of them. And look, I just so happen not to really believe that Sunak was this hapless victim that just wasn't listened to, because if he was really smart about it, he could have used that as a political opportunity. If we're thinking in raw political terms, he could have resigned, done a big speech, and then ran for Prime Minister once Boris Johnson inevitably resigned after the whole Partygate saga. And I can guarantee that his run for Prime Minister would be met so much more warmly by the party itself, because we remember Rishi Sunak was the golden boy, but now he's out of government, spreading all of these things about the Prime Minister, unveiling secrets. I mean, nobody's going to want that dude in their cabinet after that, when they know once he's left, he can't keep his mouth shut.
And Sean Bailey, that's the thing, isn't it? As Dominique says, Sunak had the purse strings in his hands. He actually had a huge amount of power. He didn't have to say to Boris every time, to Gove every time, to Hancock every time, yes, I'm going to fund this furlough scheme. He could have pushed back.
I think the point to make is if you're the Chancellor, you're in a real position to fight, to say, actually, this is the wrong thing to do. And if you can't do that, why would we have you as PM? Because at what point are you going to stand up and say, actually, we're going in a different direction? And the idea that he was haplessly dragged along, I think, is wrong. You need a Chancellor who can explain what the cost is. And in his speech, he talked about lockdowns. You know, people said that it was good for our economy. We know they're not good for our economy. We were relying on him to tell us it wasn't good for our economy. He was the Chancellor. If he couldn't see that a lockdown was no good for our economy, then what kind of Chancellor was he?
Well, indeed. And Nigel Nelson, the point is, if you disagree with a policy that significant, a lockdown policy, which whether you agree with the lockdowns or not, you have to concede has put us in the mess that we're in today. Now, some people think it's worth it. I know you're one of them. Personally, I think it was a massive folly. But the point is, if he disagreed with such a significant policy, surely the honourable thing to do was resign, and it would have made a huge difference to that policy.
Absolutely. And I agree with Dominique there. I think that if you really believe it's in the public interest to stop what is going on, you start the process in Cabinet. If you're not listened to, which is what he says happened, then your only recourse is to resign, go out there and start a public debate about whether lockdown should happen or not. My problem here is I'm not sure I quite believe Rishi Sunak with what he's told The Spectator. My information is that Wootton and Vallance actually really liked him, largely because he was the only one who really read their papers thoroughly. He asked them intelligent questions, which is more than Boris Johnson did because Boris never read the papers. So on the basis of that, it doesn't sound like, if Wootton and Vallance actually rather respected him, that Rishi Sunak sort of stood there saying, I don't agree with anything that you're saying. So this seems to be an attempt to actually woo over 160,000 Tory members for the leadership contest because it's a populist thing to say.
I mean, the thing is, Dominic, he wants to present himself as some sort of hero because in December 2021, he returned from a trip to California, which, let's be honest, that's where he really likes to be. And believe me, Rishi Sunak is going to be in California very soon, mark my words, permanently. But he was on this trip to California in 2021 and wants to make himself a hero because he returned and stopped the Omicron lockdown. But I'm sorry, by that point, we had had nearly 2 years of these lockdowns. We had been saying since April, May 2020, these lockdowns were catastrophic. So no one is a hero for stopping an Omicron lockdown in 2021.
Exactly. And I think he probably assumed being more vocal about it was more safe with regards to Omicron because there was far more people being vocal about it, even people who had supported lockdown previously coming out and saying, look, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. We cannot lock down over Omicron. So, again, like many politicians, he saw the public response and he behaved accordingly. I don't think anything he says can be trusted, quite frankly.
And what does this tell us about Sage, Dominique? Because, again, we were so heavily criticised over the lockdowns for calling out Sage, for demanding accountability when it came to Sage. I various times called for Whitty and Vallance and Ferguson and Van Tam to be sacked. That was highly controversial to say at the time. But in fact, Sunak confirms these were out-of-control, independent scientists locking down the country, dictating government policy without a scrap of evidence.
And without a scrap of scrutiny. I mean, Nigel just said the Prime Minister didn't actually read the papers. So the things that they were saying, the predictions they were making...
The papers weren't right.
Many of them were proven wrong.
Well, I would say 90% of them were
overly dramatic graphs that Whitty and Vallance were presenting to terrify the living daylights out of the public, many of them were actually proven to be wrong. And if Sunak is right that minutes from meetings were actually manipulated by Sage to make it look as though there was no dissent from the scientific line, then that just proves that they were desperate to quell any sort of dissent. And it's really important to actually ask why. I think a lot of these independent scientists were mad on power. They were hungry for media attention. They were enjoying all of the sort of esteem and attention they were getting because really and truly scientists are not very exciting people. They took it, ran with it and went mad.
Finally, we listened to that madness. Sean, I just want to finally pick up on one point because there are a lot of folk within your party, the Tory party, who say we shouldn't keep talking about lockdown. This is an old issue. This is a historic issue. Let's move on. Now, I say we need to talk about it because the consequence of the lockdown is in a large part why we're facing many of the current crises. But where do you stand on that? Do you think it's right to look backwards to lockdown?
I think lockdown's a current issue. I don't think it's looking backward. The profound effect it had on our lifestyles, on our economy, on our mental health, on the education of our children needs to be looked at. I remember all the times I've dealt with the Labour Party, they constantly talk about austerity, but they never talk about where it came from. It was their actions that delivered austerity to the country.
And they wanted harder lockdowns.
With lockdown, if we don't understand what happened with lockdown, we won't be able to build a decent response.
And by the way, we certainly would have locked down in December 2021 if Keir Starmer had been Prime Minister. We would never have come out of lockdown.
He said as much.
Yeah, he did. He tried to deny it, of course. He's done a Sunak, you might say. Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, Nigel Nelson, thank you so much. My superstar panel are here all night. But coming up, how do we stop Britain's slide into lawlessness? Former Tory Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe proposes we take the hardline approach that Rudy Giuliani used to clean up New York streets in the 90s. She's going to deliver a really important message on that at 9:40. But up next in The Clash, as GB News reveals 60% of small boats landing on British soil are from Albania. Here's Priti Patel's plan to rapidly remove them enough to help solve the Channel migrant crisis. Conservative MP Daniel Kaczynski, former SAS trooper Phil Campion and broadcaster Marinda Kerr do battle on that straight after the break. But of course, your voice, most important here on this show. Dan@gbnews.uk is my email address. You can tweet us using the handle @GBNews. Our poll running there too. Go and vote. We're back in just a couple of minutes.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Clearer for many and feeling cooler as well overnight and into tomorrow. Rain or showers expected in some western parts, but otherwise largely dry. The heavy and thundery rain we saw earlier on Thursday moving away, and with clearing skies, for many it's a fresher night to come. More comfortable for sleeping, I think. But for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, we keep a lot of cloud. There'll be some outbreaks of rain or showers into western Scotland overnight, as well as Northern Ireland, and then that turns up into West Wales as well as Cornwall by dawn. Otherwise, under the clear spells elsewhere, 10 to 13 Celsius, or even into the single figures in some sheltered spots. So a fresh start to Friday. Plenty of sunshine, mind you, across much of central and eastern England, northern Scotland, and it remains the case as we head into the afternoon. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud, extending from eastern into southern Scotland, western England, Wales and parts of Northern Ireland. And within this cloudy zone, there'll be some showery rain and some heavy downpours for southern Scotland and the far north of England. Temperatures at around average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s in the north, low 20s to the mid-20s further south. Now, the showers across many western areas will slowly drift their way northeastwards through the evening. They'll eventually fade away, but that's where the cloud will remain. Otherwise, plenty of clear spells for the start of the weekend. And a cool start for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Single figures fairly widely, mid-single figures in some sheltered spots. And we're looking at low teens further south. But Saturday starts off with sunny spells for many. There will still be a few showers remaining through the spine of the country, I think. Central parts of England into East Wales. Some of these showers will develop as we head into Saturday afternoon. But away from the showers, there'll still be some sunny spells, increasingly so through Sunday and Monday, and it'll feel warm in that sunshine.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Anne Widdecombe and Carl Hennigan on the way, but it's time now for The Clash. And breaking tonight, according to the Home Office, only 21 foreign nationals have been removed from the UK since the government toughened asylum rules after Brexit in January 2021. And earlier today, GBNews exclusively revealed that a massive 60% of small boats crossing the channel are from Albania. Yep, that NATO member country. In response to these staggering figures, Priti Patel has launched a rapid removal scheme where illegal migrants from Albania will be fast-tracked back to their own country. Under the plans, which start next week, any Albanians who claim asylum will have their cases processed immediately, and those with no right to be in the UK will be removed as soon as possible. So, with the Home Office looking to finally get to grips with the illegal crossings on the channel, tonight I'm asking you this. Is the Albania rapid removal plan enough to help solve the migrant crisis? Let me know your thoughts by emailing dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews, and while you're there, you can vote in our poll. The results shortly. But to help you make up your mind tonight, I'm joined by former SAS trooper Phil Campion, the broadcaster Newsmaker Kerr, and Conservative MP Daniel Kaczynski. Daniel, let me start with you. My concern about this plan is that a lot of the illegals who come across the channel are undocumented. They dump their passports in the sea. They often lie about where they've come from. So won't the Albanians crossing the channel just do that and make it impossible for us to prove that they're actually from that country?
Well, I think the most important thing to say is I was part of a British parliamentary delegation to Tirana earlier this year, and a cross-party delegation of British parliamentarians. And what was very interesting for us, we can only speak from the political context, what was very interesting for me and my fellow parliamentarians is the wide range of political figures that we met from different political parties. It seemed to us that there is a genuine functioning democracy in that country where political parties are holding each other to account. And the country is stable, peaceful. There is no civil war going on in Albania. And I think it's extremely important that we work with the Albanian authorities to make sure that people who are leaving that country illegally to come here as economic migrants are dealt with expeditiously.
So you back this plan from Priti Patel?
Oh, absolutely. I back it unequivocally. But can I just say, we have in Shrewsbury some wonderful Albanian people who contribute enormously to our town. So we've got to get this into perspective. Although I appreciate the measure very much and support the Home Secretary, we must remember also that many Albanian people in this country make a massive contribution to our society, and we shouldn't stigmatise all Albanians.
No, of course. I mean, if they're coming here illegally, if they're coming here legally, Phil Campion, absolutely. But the problem is, Phil, they are using illegal routes now to come across the channel. I mean, do you think this plan is going to work, Phil Campion?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but I still think more needs to be done. You know, myself personally, I've been across the channel on a small boat. I've proved the route. I've done it, and I've found it extremely easy to do so. And I'm no seaman, trust me, all right? So I found it extremely easy to do. What we've done by making it so easy for these people to get here is create a supply and demand for some criminal elements who've said, that's a great idea, let's get them over there. We've made it extremely attractive for people to come to this country, and we've made it for the right people, or who are technically the wrong people, but the right people for this scenario, they've flourished in it because they've said, right, we'll get them over here. And whether they're taking £600 or £100 to put them on a small dinghy, they're bringing them, okay? And we've made it that way, okay? If you really need asylum, you'll take asylum in the first place you get to. You'll go, wow, I'm out of there. This is actually where I'm safe. But no, they're punching all the way through. They're paying lots of money to get themselves illegally over here because they've heard it's the land of milk and honey and they'll be treated well and there's no chance they'll ever be taken back. And so what we've done is we've created this thing which has actually made a problem for our own back. We've made the rod for our own back.
No, I completely agree. Newsmaker Kerr, do you support this plan?
Phil, I'd just like to say, how have we made it easy for them? Getting in a dinghy and risking their life. How is that easy? And that isn't illegal. That's the only route they have. They can't come through a visa route.
No, they're in France, but they're in France.
On a dinghy and risk their life.
Sorry, Nurinder, just hold up one second. Nurinder, just hold up one second. I'll let you finish that point. But I really have to pick you up on this. What is unsafe about living in France? What are they
Right,
fleeing
Dan,
from?
listen,
They're in France, Narinda.
Fran's taken up. Britain takes the least amount of migrants ever. They take the least amount. We took, 22,000. We took the least amount. And what is it about Albanians? Why is the whole emphasis on Albanians?
Because do you not understand,
Anyone who's
Narinda?
coming
They are
illegally-
from a safe country. We should be offering asylum to people from genuine war zones, like
What, who said
Afghanistan,
that?
like
No, it's not
Syria.
war zones. No, Dan, you're very mistaken there.
What's wrong with Albania?
We have signed a treaty where we can take refugees who need safety. It doesn't mean war just because you take Ukrainians.
Yeah, but did you listen to what Daniel Kaczynski just said about Albania?
Ukrainians you've taken are not. Who said they're not criminals? What makes them such nice people? Why are the Albanians such bad people?
How did you want to respond to Daniel Kaczynski quickly, and then I'll get him back in?
Sorry?
Narinda, what you said you wanted to respond to something Daniel Kaczynski had said.
Oh, you said that we must remember that some Albanians are great, are good people. Well, so are most immigrants who come over. You'll get good and bad. Why are we focusing just on the Albanians? The Ukrainians that everyone seems so happy to take. Who said they're not bad people?
Well, Daniel Kaczynski, surely the point is we're focusing on the Albanians because they are the vast majority, or at least the majority of folk using illegal means at the moment across the channel, and they're coming from a safe country.
Well, we had, I think,
That's a different point.
We had an unprecedented number of people coming illegally across the channel just this week, nearly 1,300 in one day. On the way here to the studio, in the taxi, I counted 6 people on the streets of London sleeping rough. We find it difficult, which is probably one of the most galling sights you can see. But just 6 people in one short journey between my home and the studios. We are struggling at the moment to deal with our own people without actually allowing 1,300 illegal migrants to enter the United Kingdom in an illegal way. And all we want to do, and the reason I back Priti Patel is this, she wants to destroy and eliminate those criminal gangs who are making hundreds of millions of pounds every year from risking people's lives. Of course we want genuine. Many Albanian economic migrants have tremendous skills and they want to work and contribute to the United Kingdom. We would welcome them if they come on work permits, but not illegally across the English Channel. And by the way, may I just say this lastly?
That's legal.
In every general election I fought, immigration has been...
Narinda, just let Daniel finish his point. Daniel finish his point. We'll come back.
Every election, I've been an MP now for 17 years, and every election I've fought, immigration has been in the top 3 or 4 issues that the British people have raised. I want to eliminate immigration from being in the top 4 or 5. I want to focus on the things that really matter to people, like schools and hospitals. And the only way that we're going to convince the British people not to catapult immigration into the top 4 or 5 top issues concerning them at any general election is to demonstrate to them that we've got a grip on our borders.
Absolutely.
And we are allowing people into this country legally.
Can I just say, the British people are incredibly generous. We're incredibly welcoming. But all we're saying, Phil, is that the people who are entering this country need to do so through a process, need to do so legally. That is why we voted for Brexit, Phil, because we demanded control of our borders. And that's why it's so galling that it still hasn't happened.
Absolutely. I get that totally, Dan. And listen, in answer to your question about how it's being so easy, if it wasn't themed as being easy, they wouldn't do it for a start. And when was the last time you went? I've been and done it. Okay. And the other point is, when I worked in Albania a number of years ago, our interpreter, who was a very nice fella, I said to him, "This is a beautiful country, and your people are really nice. Why is there so many trying to get back to the UK?" And he said, "Because it's an easier deal than what we get out here. Your benefit system is so much better than ours." So there's a lot of people coming over here, not because they're running away from a feud, not because they've got problems at home, but because they can make a better life here. Now, that's not part of the criteria.
Yeah. I mean, Narinda, are you aware... No, that's a very good point, Phil. And I just want to ask Narinda, are you aware, Narinda, that the vast majority of these Albanians are young male? So they're economic migrants,
That's
Narinda.
because the young males come over because they can work. The wives and girlfriends, sisters are sat at home. They've got babies. They can't come over to make money.
Yeah, so it's
In Albania,
economic.
there's a huge
So it's an economic
human rights
decision.
issue. They can't make money. It's poverty. The simple answer is poverty. They can come here
Okay, but
and
Nurinder, what
work
do you propose?
and work
What's your
better than the
proposal then,
British
Nurinder?
people
That
here.
we open up our borders to anyone who is suffering poverty in their own country? Is that your solution? Because, Nurinder, you may have noticed, Nurinder, we are suffering from poverty in this country now. We are suffering from poverty. How are we just going to home these people, Nurinder? It's like the population of a small town every year.
Dan, you are not suffering because of immigration. You are suffering because of 12 years of Tory government.
No,
and because of
we're
the pandemic,
suffering
they
because of
scored
illegal
millions and millions
immigration.
into
Illegal
their friends'
immigration, Nurinder. Daniel, I'll just give Daniel Kaczynski the last word, because Nurinder says, actually, this is all down to the Tory government. Daniel, do you want to respond?
Money. They've wasted money.
Well, I think one of the main reasons the British people voted for Brexit, and I was a very strong advocate of that policy, and I'm very proud that Shrewsbury voted for Brexit, is because one of the things is that the British people wanted to control their borders. We are one of the most attractive destinations in the world, and we, by the way, I disagree with the other panelist, I think the United Kingdom takes a very large number of asylum seekers and refugees from all over the world, and we should be very proud of that. But at the end of the day, we have to demonstrate to the British people, now that we are completely in control over what happens on our borders, if we can't justify to them that we can control our borders, then what's the purpose of having a government?
No, very good point. Very good point. I completely agree. Oh, Nurinder, final word. That was meant to be the final word, so I'm going to give you 10 seconds, Nurinder.
I'm an immigrant's daughter. My parents came over and we had the same argument 40 years ago. Oh,
You came over legally.
Our jobs. We contributed to the society.
Yeah, but you came over legally.
We contributed to Britain.
But it was a legal process.
This is also legal. They're refugees. They're seeking asylum.
No, they're not. They're not. Nurinder, they're simply not. They're in France and they're from Albania, but we'll agree to disagree. Always lovely to chat. Nurinder Kerr. Thank you to the SAS trooper, former SAS trooper Phil Campion, and the Conservative MP Daniel Kaczynski. So who do you agree with? Is the Albania rapid removal plan enough to help solve the migrant crisis? From Kat on Twitter. Unless we come out of the ECHR, they will always keep finding ways of avoiding deportation. From Elliot, we'll see if it works before passing judgment. Rwanda was going to do so much before they tried implementing it too. And from Simon, they need to be turned around mid-channel or return to France within 48 hours. And your verdict is now in. Just 13% of you agree that the Albania plan is enough to help solve the migrant crisis. 87% of you say it isn't. Shows what a problem we have. Coming up, why is there a deafening silence from the MSM and the establishment over the explosion in non-COVID excess deaths? And what's causing this alarming rise? Well, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford, Carl Hennigan, he's going to investigate in The Outsider soon. But next, how do we stop Britain's slide into lawlessness? Former Tory Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe proposes we follow former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani's zero-tolerance policy. She's up with details on that straight after the break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Carl Hennigan and Lord John Stevens on the way, but now it's time for Anne Widdecombe. They are the sounds of the shots that killed 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel. And that, folks, is the sound of lawless Britain. Following the death of the innocent girl just days after 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran was stabbed on his mobility scooters, onlookers in Leeds were left shocked by this machete attack. The streets of Britain in 2022, folks. So what's the answer? Former Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe points to the example of crime-ridden New York's no-nonsense mayor Rudy Giuliani in the 1990s. His policy allowed police to stop and search suspicious people, make arrests for minor infractions that had been previously ignored, and ramped up sentencing for repeat offenders. So Anne Widdecombe, do you think the so-called, and I love this policy actually, 3 strikes and you're out, could that be the solution to lawless Britain? Because something dramatic has to change, Anne.
We've tried that before. We tried it in Michael Howard's time, and we tried it with burglary, which was then and is still a massive, accounts for a massive amount of crime. And we tried the 3 strikes and you're out policy with that. That wasn't as effective as we had hoped, as I had hoped, as Michael Howard had hoped. But I think if you look at Giuliani in New York, you've got a very, very different situation. Now, what he proposed was complete zero tolerance from the smallest crime all the way up, obviously, to the more serious ones. But, and this is something I've always said and made very clear, he put, in order to achieve that, Dan, he put 11,000 extra police on the streets of New York. 11,000 in New York. Now, that's one city. Yeah. So even if we could find 11,000 for London, you know, you've got Liverpool, you've got Birmingham, you've got other huge cities where you've got crime problems. So I always say to people, don't just imagine that overnight you can introduce zero tolerance. But what you can do is you can focus on certain crimes. And I would say knife and gun crime are the obvious ones at the moment. And you can say, right, we have absolute zero tolerance of that. If you're caught with a knife, you know, you're being caught tomorrow morning. If the barristers aren't on strike, you're being caught tomorrow morning. And you won't be going home tonight. Instead of going out and having a fun evening, you'll actually spend it in custody. Now, until that message gets over, and that does involve a huge amount of stop and search, it won't be taken seriously. And honestly, you can announce all the policies on earth, but unless they're implemented with dispatch and with force, by which I don't mean physical force, but with concentration, unless you actually do that, forget it. You're talking to the skies. And by the way, can I just say something very quickly? I know we've passed on from your previous discussion, but the joy about the Albanian policy is this. They're taking back their own nationals. Now, not even ECHR is going to find it easy to object to a country accepting its own nationals.
So you think it's a good plan?
Oh, I think it's a very good plan. It's not going to solve everything, of course it isn't. But I think it could make a very major contribution, and particularly in deterrence. I mean, if Albanians know that the instant they arrive on our shore, they're going to be sent back to their own country, then the incentive to pay people traffickers huge amount of money disappears.
I hope so. I just... The thing I can't get my head around with this policy, Anne, is that we know that the vast majority of these illegals who come across the channel, they destroy all of their documentation, they destroy their passports, they throw their mobile phones in the sea. So isn't the issue that if you're Albanian, all you'll do now is you'll say, I've come from Afghanistan?
Somalia or Afghanistan. Yeah, of course you will. But that is where, if we only implemented my policy of detaining all new asylum seekers, you could actually establish their nationality, because do they speak the language of the country they claim to come from? Do they know its geography? Can they say where they lived? Can they describe the area? That is the sort of questioning which we should be doing. I mean, it ain't rocket science, Dan. It really ain't rocket science.
No, indeed. Look, Anne, we are both backing Liz Truss, I guess, with a big dollop of hope, because the country needs hope. But you look at all of these crises, you know, you look at lawless Britain, you look at the energy crisis, you look at the national emergency on the channel, and it is a national emergency. This is not just a crisis, it is an invasion of our country. The problem is she's got to fight on so many fronts, and I understand how difficult that's going to be. I guess one criticism I would have of Liz Truss's campaign, and I think it's been a good campaign, is I haven't really heard her talk tough on law and order. She's expressed her sympathy to the victims and the families of the victims, but I haven't heard her come up with any significant plan other than to keep recruiting the extra police, which is proving really difficult, by the way, because folk don't want to join the police force at the moment.
No, I haven't heard any coherent plan either for law and order or for the NHS. And I think that is true of both candidates. They're dodging the really big ones. And there does need to be a plan for law and order, and it needs to be multifaceted. Yes, we do need more police. Yes, we do need those police to be concentrating on crime and not on wokery and all the rest of it, and not on bureaucracy either, on filling in endless forms. Yes, we do need to focus on certain crimes and really have a blitz on those so that people understand that they're more likely to be caught than not, because the single biggest deterrent to committing crime is that you think you'll be caught. And most people think, with good reason, quite honestly, that they won't be.
Well, they won't at the moment. Anne Widdecombe.
No, they won't.
Thank you so much, Anne. We will speak next week. But coming up is lefty newsreader and ardent Tory basher Emily Maitlis, right to make claims that Tories are infiltrating the anti-Brexit BBC. We'll debate that impartiality delusion from Ms Maitlis in the Media Buzz at 10:30. But up next, why is there a deafening silence from the establishment over the explosion in non-COVID excess deaths? Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford, Carl Hennigan, investigates in The Outsider straight after the break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up. But first, Carl Hennigan. Professor Carl Hennigan is tonight's outsider. Now, Britain is gripped by an excess deaths mystery, with some 12,500 more people dying over the past 14 weeks compared to normal. And here's the thing, they didn't succumb to coronavirus. That's around 1,000 Brits a week dying before their time, and nobody seems to know why. Is it because of lockdowns, vaccine side effects, a congested health service, or perhaps a nation still so frightened to death by government COVID propaganda that they're too terrified to visit their GP? We need answers, and we need answers fast. For 2 years, the MSM couldn't get enough of announcing daily COVID death and infection figures to the nation, readily pouncing when doomsday government scientists fed them a slab of meat. But there is now complete silence from the likes of Sky News and the BBC at a time when they should be shouting from the rooftops looking for answers. And just where the hell is our chief medical officer, the now knighted Sir Christopher Whitty? He performed an impressive disappearing act indeed. One man who's been investigating this death spree is Professor Carl Hennigan, director of the University of Oxford's Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine and a clinical epidemiologist. And I'm delighted that he joins me now. So, Professor Carl Hennigan, what do you think, looking at the evidence, is the explanation behind these excess deaths?
Unfortunately, I can't hear you, Dan, at this moment in time. There's some technical issue.
Oh, no, we can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me now? You just speak,
I can't hear
Carl.
you, Dan.
Oh, no. Well, look, Carl, while we're getting you set up, what I'm going to do is tell you what a Department for Health and Social Care spokesman said on the matter. They said analysis is ongoing and these estimates of weekly excess mortality will be regularly updated. Investigation by cause suggests circulatory diseases and diabetes may be partly responsible for the excess deaths. The excess is an overall statistical measure, so our analysis does not involve the identification or investigation of individual unexpected deaths. And I believe we have Carl Hennigan back, or we don't? Oh, sorry, I thought we might have Carl Hennigan back. But it is absolutely fascinating what's going on with these death figures. And what to me is particularly shocking is the lack of interest from the media to actually properly consider what could be behind these excess death figures. And actually, when I look at what Carl Hennigan said could be, there are a whole long list of things, and we actually need answers. He says it could be the consequences of inadequate treatment and care received during periods of restriction. It could be the consequences of inadequate treatment and care received during periods of restrictions, especially for chronic conditions or evolving serious diseases such as cancer. It could be increased cardiovascular risk due to sedentary lifestyles and increased food and alcohol consumption. Could be the impact of the pandemic on NHS staffing levels, fatigue and other structural consequences. Could be a lack of emergency service, a lack of timely access to emergency services, a lack of access to primary community and preventive care are an unknown or unforeseen cause.
Yeah.
Now, Carl Hennigan, I'm so sorry. We could hear you, you couldn't hear me. But look, I've taken everyone through, Carl, your potential reasons for this. But why do you think there's such a lack of focus on these excesses?
Well, I think things have moved on in the last 2 weeks since we started pointing this out, and you showed all the articles. But I think the first is to admit there's an excess death problem. We're now getting near to about 20,000. There's been a further 10% in the last 2 weeks, and it doesn't look like abating. So the problem's still there. Interestingly as well, our people in the background, there seems to be a problem in other countries as well, in Europe and in America, similar type increases. The second issue then is the Department of Health and Social Care came out and said, well, we think it's cardiovascular disease and diabetes. And then third is you're coming at it. And just to say, Dan, I don't think you're a crank, a denier or a nut job. You ask the difficult questions and go, what might be causing this? I think there are some things we can say are really important. And Steve Barclay was accosted on this today, wasn't it?
Yes. We're going to play that clip after the news.
Look, the problem in the ambulance service needs fixing. It's minutes that matter when it comes to a heart attack. If you have a cardiac arrest, let me just say, if we get to you within 1 minute, there's a 90% chance of survival. By 10 minutes, it's down to 5%. So when you see Christian Eriksen playing football, you understand the effect of getting there in a timely fashion. Minutes matter when it comes to emergencies. So there is a problem there that needs an approach a bit like the vaccines, where this new Prime Minister coming in says, this is number one fix.
Carl, speaking of the vaccines, can I just ask you, do you see any evidence that the spike in excess deaths could be connected at all to side effects or COVID vaccine injury?
So the key, Dan, is it's in my job title, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine. It's not what I think, what my opinion is. It's what does the evidence say? And we are working hard to try and get underlying what's going on. What we need at the moment is access to the raw data. And if I was at the heart of government now, I'd be triggering this investigation, getting the independent epidemiologist in to ask these questions, important questions. What else might be underlying this that actually seems to be occurring in other countries? I can't give you an opinion. It's not in my job title. But soon as we have the evidence to hand, I'll come back on the show and I'll let you know what the
and Carl, just finally, are you starting to see evidence that lockdowns could actually end up, because it's always been a belief of mine, but I know you're right, we need to wait for the evidence. Do you think lockdowns could end up killing more people than COVID? Are you starting to see evidence of lockdown-related deaths?
You see, I think of it this way, Dan. I think there are very few things that could have the catastrophic effect of lockdowns and the collateral impact going forward. It's a bit like nuclear fallout, isn't it? You have the initial problem, and it's a huge problem. But if you look at Chernobyl, we're not talking about a couple of years. We could be talking about this in a decade's time. There are huge socioeconomic consequences, huge impact on mental health, preventive healthcare, and cancer. This is why, and Rishi's coming out and rewriting the story and going, I am now becoming aware of all these issues, which at the time we didn't even discuss or put in the melting pot for the decisions.
But we were warning him. Professor Carl Hennigan, please keep on this, and we will have you back very soon. Thank you so much, Carl.
Take care, Dan.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, despite his scandalous booting from number 10 by Tory MPs, Boris Johnson continues to lead the West on Ukraine. And speaking in Kiev yesterday, he issued a rallying cry to the British people to hold firm, even amid the cost of living crisis.
We're paying in our energy bills for the evils of Vladimir Putin. The people of Ukraine are paying in their blood.
Reports that the EU is losing the will to back Ukraine. Is Boris right that we should have to endure high energy bills that are decimating many businesses and lives to defeat Putin? I'll pose that difficult but important question to my superstar panel next. Tonight, I'm joined by Conservative commentator Dominic Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and the Sunday Mirror's political editor Nigel Nelson. Next week marks the 25th anniversary of Princess Diana's death, and conspiracy theories that she was murdered have exploded on the social media platform TikTok.
Princess Diana was killed by the royal family. Watch till the end. This one is crazy.
The French military agency locked up and prohibited access to
the conspiracy theories will never go away.
So, the man who led the British police inquiry into her death, former Met Commissioner Lord Stevens, joins me at 10:15 live as he separates the fact from the fiction. As fishy Rishi Sunak claims he was in a constant battle with doomsday scientists over COVID lockdowns, is the ex-Chancellor just desperately rewriting history? You can guess what I think. We'll get the views of my panel when they nominate their greatest Britain and Union jackass at 10:50. Plus, can the former Brexit Party turn the energy crisis into a game-changing political revolution? Reform UK's leader Richard Tice unveils his party's battle plan for the global energy war and Britain's future in Uncancelled at 10:40. She's blatantly spouted her left-wing views on the BBC for years. So is Emily Maitlis really right to suggest that the Bee, known for its anti-conservative and anti-Brexit coverage, has somehow been infiltrated by Tories? And finally, House of the Dragon was a roaring success this week, but Lord of the Rings is coming.
Without it, what am I to be?
I'll show you more of the most expensive TV series ever in the Media Buzz at 10:30. And as always, we'll get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages the moment they drop. But before all of that, the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Dan. It's 3 minutes past 10. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The family of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was shot in her home in Liverpool, are appealing for the public to do the right thing to help find the gunman. It's after police said they will not rest until they find who killed Olivia. Merseyside detectives have also confirmed they've identified a second man involved in the shooting. They say he was with the 35-year-old suspected target. Officers are urging the gunman to surrender. Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Kameen says the force is working around the clock to find Olivia's killer.
I asked for the man responsible for this brutal, callous, thoughtless attack to surrender himself to the police. Unfortunately, that individual has failed to do that. But my message to him remains the same. We will not rest until we find you, and we will find you.
In that press conference, Merseyside Police also confirmed the arrest of a man and a woman following another fatal shooting in Liverpool. Council worker Ashley Dale was found with gunshot wounds in her back garden in the Old Swan neighbourhood on Sunday. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have been going head-to-head in the Tory hustings in Norwich this evening. Well, ahead of the hustings, Ms Truss visited a food factory in Norfolk. She said she'll look at doing more to help businesses with soaring energy costs if she becomes the next Prime Minister.
Well, what I will also do, if elected as Prime Minister, is look at business energy costs, because it is one of the issues holding back business. Keeping corporation tax low is also important. Reversing the national insurance rise is also important, so we get the business investment and the growth that we need.
Meanwhile, Sunak has vowed never to let political correctness get in the way of people's safety. As the former Chancellor backed the use of stop and search, he added stop and search is a good example of a technique that works, that police forces are not always using for reasons that are not right. The number of asylum claims being made in the UK are at the highest level in 20 years, leading to a record backlog of applications. New Home Office figures show at the end of June, over 85,000 people had been waiting for more than 6 months for an initial decision. That's up 59% from last year. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. The first front pages are in, hot off the press, and the Metro leads with an extraordinary outburst by a member of the public directed at Health Secretary Steve Barclay today. Now, I have to be honest with you, I know I shouldn't laugh. You shouldn't laugh. But this was a bit like the thick of it in real life. Watch.
That plan for jobs has protected.
Are you going to do
businesses.
anything about the ambulances waiting and the people dying out? Well, don't you think 12 years is long enough?
Yes, and we
12
are
years,
taking...
you've done bugger all about it. People have died and all you've done is nothing.
Oh, goodness. Sean Bailey was watching that. Sean, you're a politician. You had your head in your hands.
You know, it's just one of those situations you can't win. She does have a point.
Yeah.
The minister, you're full of all kind of technical answers. She doesn't care.
So
she wants her ambulance.
Yeah, but
now.
for the grace of
Yeah,
God.
yeah, exactly. I've been there. It's not comfortable.
Now, let's get back to the papers. The Eye leads on tomorrow's record energy price cap announcement, where domestic bills are expected to rocket by 80%. More on that shortly. The Daily Telegraph reports the new Prime Minister will offer urgent help with those energy bills. Elsewhere, a record 1.2 million migrants gained UK visas last year. But actually, two columnists on this front page that I am really interested in. Fraser Nelson, who conducted that Rishi Sunak interview. The strap headline there, the lockdown myth is about to unravel. And I love this from Alison Pearson. What a brilliant comparison. Emily Maitlis is the Meghan of journalism. Brilliant point. We will be speaking about Ms Maitlis shortly. Superstar panel back with me, Sean Bailey, who you just saw, the political commentator, Dominique Samuels too, and the political editor for the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Now, Boris Johnson has told Britons they must pay the price of rising energy bills in order to defeat Vladimir Putin during an unannounced visit to Kiev. The outgoing Prime Minister said the West must stay the course on Ukraine, despite the cost of lockdown crisis being exacerbated by the war.
I can tell you that we in the UK will not for 1 second give in to Putin's economic blackmail. If we're paying in our energy bills for the evils of Vladimir Putin, the people of Ukraine are paying in their blood. And that's why we know we must stay the course.
That was atypically Boris' bullish rallying cry. But there are fears that European support for Ukraine's war against Russia is drying up. EU governments reportedly increasingly concerned about spending money on arms and humanitarian supplies as their citizens face rocketing energy prices. And even though it's not an easy conversation to have, it feels increasingly necessary given the huge impact it's having on Brits, many of whom will face a choice between heating or eating this winter. So is Boris Johnson right that Brits should have to endure high energy bills to defeat Putin? Now, Dominique Samuels, you have been sceptical about this war from the start, in large part because of the domestic consequences.
Yeah.
Do you feel that we should be having this conversation now about whether the war is worth what it's going to unleash this winter?
I think most definitely we are starting to have more of an honest conversation about the consequences of this war. I was one of the first people to start showing scepticism about this, and I was roundly ridiculed. However, the evidence just keeps stacking up. You know, it's quite interesting that Boris has been on 2 holidays, been very silent about the cost of living crisis, been very silent about the invasion that's currently going on at the English Channel. Didn't visit that, didn't go there, didn't go to Dover, but swans over to Ukraine. And, you know, OK, it's fine, right? It's their anniversary. Of course, he has to be there, make a few promises, show his face. But it seems that Boris is far more interested in having his ego stroked in Ukraine than focusing on the people that are in destitution here. And let's just be honest about these sanctions. They're not really working as we would have hoped. We were told that these were economy-destroying sanctions, but we've not really seen that because Russia's currency, the ruble, is the strongest that it's ever been. Its stocks are up. It's due to get a massive windfall financially because of oil prices being stronger than ever. We've pushed them closer to China, so it's not really seeing the impact of these sanctions. So if you're telling us that these sanctions are going to be long-term, which I'm assuming they are because they're not really working straight away, can you let us know how long we're going to have to deal with soaring inflation? Is it going to be 3 years? Is it going to be 5 years? Is it going to be 10? But no, all we get from the Prime Minister is trajectory and more promises of our taxpayers' cash to Ukraine. Meanwhile, there's people in this country that can't afford their energy bills, and it's disgusting.
Sean Bailey, an impassioned message there from Dominique, but you actually think Boris Johnson is right to stay the course and that we all have to stay the course?
Let's be clear, Dominique's entirely wrong. The point is this, the war has happened. If we withdrew all of our support from Ukraine tomorrow morning, it would have absolutely no effect on our bills. They still continue to go up because of what Russia has decided to do. And there's a long-term issue here. If we let Russia have their way now, two very important things will happen. Our inflation and our bills will continue to grow because they will have all the control over European energy supplies. Boris is correct to focus us again because the Germans who were very slow to support in the beginning are beginning to waver because they are dependent on Russia for energy supplies, and that's pushing the cost up for us all. So if we leave now, we'll regret it for a much longer time. And the second thing is, what is this going to do to the world order? Russia have demonstrated quite ably they do not believe in a rules-based international order. If we let them get away with it, the entire world will be changed. And if you living in Taiwan, for instance, you'll be very interested in what happens in the Ukraine because it might change how China behaves, which will make inflation go through the roof because it'll affect the entire world's economy in a very strong way.
That's all
so to stick to it is important for our long-term security. And we as a nation should be building our own energy supply. That's why things like nuclear power stations and all the wind that we can do ourselves, we should be getting.
All right, Sean, that's all well and good to say that we need to do this for the long term. We need to be building up our energy supplies. But again, these are all long-term solutions, and the hit that we're getting from soaring inflation, which, let's just be honest, OK, this isn't just because of Russia. Energy bills have been soaring progressively before Russia invaded Ukraine. So the idea that this is all just Russia is nonsense as well. But let's just be honest, how long are we going to have to deal with soaring energy prices? Because the reality is, based upon what's predicted and what's to come, what's going on right now with inflation is going to look like a picnic a year from now.
That's exactly.
So shouldn't the Prime Minister be honest about how long this is going to take? How long these sanctions are going to take?
Nobody knows.
They do know.
No, they don't know because it's based on what Russia do and why.
Does Russia look like it's going to be withdrawing from Ukraine anytime soon?
No, it doesn't. And
why?
That's why.
Why
that's
is that?
why.
But why is that though?
That is
why.
Because it's an action that Russia wants to take.
No, because the sanctions are not having a big enough impact for them to want to withdraw. Do you accept that?
What else would you do?
Do you accept that?
What other lever?
Can you answer my question?
What other lever do Europe have to pull?
Do you accept that the sanctions at the moment are not doing enough for him to remove himself from Ukraine?
We've done all the sanctions we can.
So that would be a no then?
But what other lever would you pull? Please tell me. Please tell me now Europe, or anybody in Europe, including America.
Well, I did say from the beginning what I think we should do, and I think it's looking ever more likely that this will happen. We need to focus on diplomatic solutions, whether that be looking at a territorial settlement.
So you're
and
saying
that's not very popular. I acknowledge it's not very popular, but that is what is going to happen.
So you're saying
mark my words.
We should support Ukraine in crumbling and giving in to Putin, and you honestly believe that's going to solve? Of course it is. He's invaded a country, and you're suggesting that we support him by making sure he gets what he wants. That is a ridiculous outcome for all of us.
Not that we support him,
that would be ridiculous.
But trying to evade a war and trying to make it as short as possible for the benefit of the people living in this country.
Nigel Nelson, you've got the deciding vote on this tonight. Who are you with, Dominique
I'm
or
afraid
Sean?
I'm with Sean on this one.
Well, I'm not surprised.
It is really important that we support Ukraine. We can hope that the war is coming to an end in the next few months on the basis that...
You think Putin's going to just...
what I think is that Putin is running out of troops. He's called this a special operation. He can't, therefore, mobilise all his forces without coming back from the idea of a special operation, and it may be that we end up with a negotiated settlement.
Look,
Of what territory?
No, I mean, at the moment, it looks as if Ukraine will actually be able to keep their territory, but there would be a quid pro quo for it.
And what do you think that quid pro quo?
Probably Russia and Ukraine being closer, which they have been in the past.
In what way?
in Ukraine not joining the EU, Ukraine not joining NATO. There's hundreds of other things.
And those are two. Yeah, but can I just say, those are two things that Zelensky at first said that he would never do. So there's going to have to be give and take, as I've been saying.
But not territory. That's the Ukrainian people don't.
Well,
want that.
I think it's inevitable.
Now, the COVID hysterics running the Australian state of Queensland have stooped to a new level of lunacy. In a disgusting abuse of power, hundreds of school teachers who choose not to be vaccinated are having their pay slashed, with some set to lose thousands of dollars. And if that wasn't awful enough, take a look at this dystopian news report from Australia's 9 News.
In the last 48 hours, hundreds of teachers have received a dressing down and a pay cut. The Education Department letter slamming their conduct. It is important that you are aware of the seriousness with which the department views your inappropriate behaviour and failure to comply with the direction.
Oh yeah, just totally normal stuff, right? How are we here? One of our superstar panellists, Adam Brooks, tweeted this week, "This is unscientific and abhorrent. Anyone that supports this has truly lost the plot. A vile policy with no science or evidence to make it remotely justifiable." And actually, I'm just going to go with Adam. Couldn't have said it better myself. Dominic Samuels, Sean Bailey, Nigel Nelson, do stand by, because coming up, as she blatantly spouted her left-wing views on the BBC, is Emily Baitness really right to suggest the Beeb, known for its anti-Conservative and anti-Brexit news coverage, has been infiltrated by Tories? We're going to debate that as the Media Buzz continues at 10:30. But first, next week marks the 25th anniversary of Princess Diana's death, and conspiracy theories that she was murdered have exploded on the social media platform TikTok. The man who led the British police inquiry into her death, former Met Commissioner Lord Stevens, joins me live next to separate the fact from the fiction.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, the spectre of Princess Diana's death continues to loom over the royal family, especially the heir to the throne, Prince Charles, her ex-husband. As the 25th anniversary approaches next week, the untimely passing of the 36-year-old in 1997 has been thrust back into the fore with a major new Channel 4 TV series investigating Diana, Death in Paris. It responds to the increasing number of conspiracy theories that have gained significant traction with millions of views on the Chinese social media platform TikTok.
That Princess Diana was killed by the royal family. Watch till the end. This one is crazy. August 31st, 1997, Princess Diana died in a car accident in Paris, France. A year prior to her death in 1996, she wrote a letter stating her husband is trying to kill her.
There was 14 cameras in the surrounding area where Princess Diana crashed, and not one of them was working.
Not true.
It is said that Princess Diana was murdered due to the fact she was pregnant with a mixed-race baby.
Not true. Just look at the facts.
The more I get into this, the more this is really looking like a cover-up. The French military agency locked up and prohibited access to the files.
The conspiracy theories will never go away.
And with the eyes of the world on the story, Metropolitan Police Commissioner at the time, Lord Stevens, was tasked with leading the high-profile inquiry into the death of the beloved princess. His intense three-year investigation concluded it was not murder after the grilling of more than 100 witnesses, including our future king, Prince Charles.
I wasn't frightened of the establishment. The decision was made to see Prince Charles because of the Burrell letter and the allegations made in that letter. Princess Diana had stated that she was going to be murdered by her husband. He came in, was extremely charming. I put questions to him, which were noted down by Dave Douglas.
Lord Stevens is asking him questions, and he deliberately, on a couple of occasions, leant past Lord Stevens to ask me general questions about Paget. How's it going? Is the inquiry going okay? He was putting me at my ease by actually including me in the conversation. I thought that's quite classy. All I'll say is that when it came to all of the details in that note, the Prince of Wales couldn't understand any of it. He couldn't understand why it was written. He couldn't understand why those names were put in there. He just couldn't help us.
And Lord Stevens joins me now to reveal what really happened on that fateful night in Paris. Lord Stevens, thank you so much for taking the time. Are you concerned that these conspiracy theories, as most people would think they are starting to gain significant traction? Because the point of your investigation was to put them to bed once and for all. But it feels like this new generation is becoming convinced that Princess Diana may have been murdered via videos that they're watching on platforms like TikTok.
Well, I think we've got to go back to when we took up the inquiry, which was after the conclusion of the French inquiry. And it was 85 and 90% of the population thought there was something in the conspiracy. And the allegation was, putting it simply, that Prince Philip, the husband of the Queen, had, together with MI5 and 6, murdered the most popular woman in the world. Now, by the time 4 years later happened, when we've done the inquiry for 3 years and then been to the coroner's inquest, which was in front of a jury, of course, that was no longer the case. And I think if you watch the programme, you'll see that Michael Mansfield said it was time to move on, with a very eminent Queen's Counsel representing Mohammed Al-Fayed in the court. And equally, it was Mohammed himself said it's time to move on. And the jury came to the conclusion, after 3 to 4 years of hard work, that our conclusions were right, that this was an accident.
I have watched the whole documentary series, actually. I found it absolutely fascinating. And obviously, I know how hard you worked to answer all of the conspiracy theories. But I just want to pick up, just so you can respond to a couple of the key allegations that are being made on these social media platforms. Why did you not speak to the Queen or Prince Philip? Because after all, as you say, the accusations are being made against Prince Philip, yet he never spoke to you.
Well, I think Dave Douglas and I explained it in the programme, and I would encourage people to watch the programme with an open mind, not just our 2 episodes, the last 2 episodes coming up on Sunday and Monday, but the French inquiry as well. We had no evidence, no reason to interview the Queen or Prince Philip. There was no evidence whatsoever against either of them. In relation to Prince Charles, it was somewhat different, because there was a letter in existence which actually said that Diana might be murdered or would be murdered because Tiggy-Leg Burke was pregnant and had a baby by Prince Charles. Now, that allegation was put to him. He denied it. And there was no evidence, after all the allegations we looked at, that came and actually supported that. Further, Go. Okay, sure. Sorry. Yeah.
No, sorry. I was just going to say we're showing the note at the moment because I think this is the note that attracts the most attention online because it is truly shocking to read even today, given it was penned by Princess Diana just 10 months before her death. And she writes, "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry Tiggy." Now, of course, we know the latter part of the note was complete rubbish and likely that idea had been put into the head of Princess Diana by Martin Bashir, the disgraced BBC journalist. But Lord Stevens, the first part of the note is virtually identical to how Diana did end up dying. How did Prince Charles explain that?
Well, Prince Charles didn't have to explain it. We looked at 104 allegations which related to other issues and this. There was no evidence whatsoever that actually this was the case. Let me take it further. This letter actually was produced and other people have given evidence. We interviewed another 300 witnesses separately who said that a state of mind, maybe because that had been put in her head by Mr. Bashir, who knows, but there's some evidence that's the case. And there was no evidence that this was the case. Her state of mind at this time, you can take it from me and other people will verify this, was she was extremely vulnerable. She was paranoid. And as Lord Mishcon, a solicitor would say, who we took 2 statements from him, she was very vulnerable. She would accept what was being said to her. And she thought everybody was against her in terms of conspiracy. She was in a very bad state at that time.
You didn't speak to Martin Bashir for your investigation. Is that a regret of yours now, given what has emerged? Oh, no. We've lost Lord Stevens. What a shame. We will try and get him back very shortly. Oh, we've got you back, Lord Stevens. Sorry, Lord Stevens, can you just repeat that? Because we just lost you briefly. I just asked about why you didn't interview Martin Bashir.
Well, if we'd have known what we know now, we would have definitely interviewed Martin Bashir, probably under caution as it happened. But at that stage, we didn't know what he'd been involved in. It only came from Earl Spencer, that he had tricked her into saying things. He had produced documents which are forgeries, which had obviously had an effect on her state of mind. And that state of mind was made more vulnerable, more paranoid by his actions.
Do you think he has a criminal case to answer?
Well, I think that's up to other people. That'll be up to the new commissioner, I suppose, Sir Mark Rowley. It'll be up to other people to have a look at. But I think the BBC's own inquiry, which was undertaken, raises lots of questions that need to be answered. Now, whether there's a criminal case involved in this, that's up for legal argument and legal advice.
But just to clarify, you didn't interview anyone for your inquiry under caution, did you?
No.
But you would have interviewed Bashir under caution?
I think the probability is, depending again, as I said, on legal advice, we probably would have interviewed him under caution, yes.
Absolutely fascinating. Of course, you did speak to Mohammed Al-Fayed as well, a man who 25 years on is still grieving the loss of his son. Even though he did admit the case should be closed, it had taken much out of him, he remains convinced to this day, Lord Stevens, that there was a conspiracy to kill his son and Diana because of the fact that he was Muslim and Princess Diana may have been carrying Dodi's unborn baby, and the royal family couldn't stomach the idea of having a Muslim member of the royal family. How were you able to disprove Mohammed Al-Fayed's allegations?
By going solely where the evidence took us. I did the inquiry because Mohammed Al-Fayed had confidence, bearing in mind what had been achieved in Northern Ireland on what was called Stevens 1, 2 and 3, related to collusion between the Protestant paramilitaries and the security forces, that I was the only one to do the job. I had to say it was it was a unique kind of ask. So I did the job at his really firm request, saw him once a month, took him through all the processes of what were going on. It was only when we produced the report on that last day that he actually wouldn't see me and had nothing to do with me from then onwards, until, of course, the coroner's inquest. When I was in the witness box being cross-examined, I started off by asking for an apology from Mr. Al-Fayed, which I never got. I think you've got one point wrong. I think you will see, and I think it's in the 4th episode where Mr. Al-Fayed accepts the jury's verdict. And the jury's verdict was exactly along the lines of what we had come up with in the inquiry and the investigation, based on the evidence. And I thought that was the hard thing for him to do, and I admire him for doing it.
And just finally, Lord Stevens, for the young people out there who are looking at these video clips, reading about the note, reading about Diana's lawyer who wrote another note talking about her suspicion of the fact that she was going to be murdered, looking at Mohammed Al-Fayed's claims throughout the years, can you just very simply sum up for us how and why Diana died in a Paris tunnel in August 1997?
Well, it's very hard to do in summary, but I'll do that. It was a car that was driven too fast, being chased by the paparazzi. The individual driving that car had some drink. We've got some CCTV of him having 2 or 3 Ricards in the hotel and gone home. He was ordered to come back by Dodi Fayed, drove a car, and he drove it too fast, and he went down the Elma Tunnel. It's all been proven by those experts who reconstructed the crash and hit a pillar there. And it's as simple as that. It's a hard thing to accept, I know, but it took us 4 years and going in front of a jury for 6 months and being cross-examined to actually convince that jury and others. What I will say, I really, really would say, if people have any doubts about what has happened in relation to the death of Princess Diana, and I can understand some of them having them, please watch the programme from start to finish and keep an open mind. And then if you decide it's still a conspiracy, there's not much more we can do about it. And there will be those about, believe it or not, which will do that.
Prince Harry is currently writing his autobiography. He is rumoured to be looking into the circumstances around his mum's death. Did he reach out to you at all in the preparation of that book?
Nothing to do with the book, but I did see Prince Harry and Prince William on a one-to-one basis for an hour to an hour and a half, and outlined what the conclusions of the inquiry was, and then for a very lengthy period of time answered their questions, which were needed to be answered by 2 boys who had lost their mother in difficult circumstances.
Lord Stevens, who led the police investigation into Princess Diana's death, thank you so much. Coming up in Uncancelled, can Reform UK turn the energy crisis into a game-changing political revolution? The party's leader, Richard Tice, unveils its battle plan for the global energy war and Britain's future soon. But next in the Media Buzz, she blatantly spouted her left-wing views on the BBC for years. But is Emily Maitlis right to suggest that the Beeb, known for its anti-Conservative and anti-Brexit news coverage, has been infiltrated by Tories? We'll debate that after the break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel, And every morning at 6 a.m, it's Breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's News Tonight now in our Media Buzz. More front pages have just been delivered. This is one I'm really worried about, actually. The Sun exclusively reveals the Queen will appoint the new PM at Balmoral instead of Buckingham Palace in a historic first. She is reportedly still struggling with her mobility. Lots of fears at the moment around Her Majesty's health. She's 96 years old, and I just hope she's going to be all right. In The Guardian, head teachers in England are calling on ministers to delay the return of pre-pandemic exam conditions for another year after GCSE results showed a, quote, disturbing gap in attainment between pupils in the north and south. The Times leads with Liz Truss's big package to help with energy bills, with Ofgem expected to raise the price cap from £1,971 to £3,500 tomorrow. Now, Truss is reportedly planning billions of pounds of targeted support for pensioners and the poorest households. The Daily Star says, oh, God, I can't even believe, oh, my goodness. We're going to probe Uranus as it's revealed a NASA mission to the planet is being plotted, but it will take 15 years to get there. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and political editor for the Sun Mirror Nigel Nelson. Now, we all know the BBC is a representation of the Brexit-hating, Boris-despising London left-wing metropolitan elite. But one of their most egregious alumni, Emily Maitlis, doesn't think it's lefty enough. So let's just remind ourselves of the former Newsnight presenter who has since fled to LBC's left-wing echo chamber, where she's far better suited, let's be honest. Let's just remind ourselves of Maitlis spouting blatant bias on the airwaves while being paid for by our taxpayer money.
Dominic Cummings broke the rules. The country can see that, and it shocked the government cannot. The longer ministers and Prime Minister tell us he worked within them, the more angry the response to this scandal is likely to be.
At what point do you say, actually, democracy is not as important as the future economy and stability and prosperity of the country right now?
It is consistent casual racism.
That's not casual racism
week
at all.
after week from
it's
you.
Not casual
That's what you
whatsoever.
trade in.
What Brexit vision will be on your manifesto then?
Well, we will decide what our manifesto position is, as we normally do.
But in a serious case of living in an alternate reality in front of her elite peers last night at the Edinburgh TV Festival, she hilariously claimed that the corporation has been infiltrated by Tories and tore into her former employer for reprimanding her over that Dominic Cummings Newsnight monologue. Watch.
Why had the BBC immediately and publicly sought to confirm the government spoke due process, unless it was perhaps sending a message of reassurance? Context of the BBC board, where another active agent of the Conservative Party, a former Downing Street spin doctor and former advisor to BBC rival GBNews, now sits, acting as the arbiter of BBC impartiality. According to the Financial Times, he's attempted to block the appointment of journalists he considers damaging to government relations, provoking Labour's deputy leader, among others, to call it Tory cronyism at the heart of the BBC.
Funny that she hasn't mentioned all of those BBC board members with Labour Party connections. And tonight, the frontrunner to be the next Prime Minister, Liz Truss, hit out at the lack of impartiality across the mainstream media.
The BBC, Tory bias, Labour bias, or studiously neutral?
I don't think anybody is neutral, and I think we're all kidding ourselves if we pretend there are institutions or people who are neutral. I'd rather have more honest bias.
I mean, what sort of world is Emily Maitlis living in, Sean Bailey, when she's suggesting that the BBC, the Boris bashing corporation, the British bashing corporation, the Brexit bashing corporation is somehow being infiltrated by nasty Tories like you?
I mean, look, if we've infiltrated the BBC, we haven't done it that well. Because the BBC is not trumpeting our message. I think, look, from a sane point of view, she must be playing to her crowd. She's in a room with a group of people who she believes are anti-Tory. She must be playing to that crowd. If she's not doing that, she has rewritten history in the most bizarre way. I know people on the left will tell you that the BBC's right and people on the right to the BBC's left, but there's nobody on the planet who could tell you that the BBC have supported the Conservative government, the last three Conservative government. It simply isn't true. And her in particular was quite lauded at the BBC, and she was the chief of it all, so I think she's just wrong. Again, I can only imagine she's playing to the crowd.
Dominique?
It's not the government that has had all of this influence over the BBC. It's the public. The public have rejected the BBC, rejected the BBC's bias, and no longer trust it as a news source. That's the reason why, because their output is clearly biased, specifically biased against Brexit. We all know that. So this idea that the BBC is somehow pro-Tory and pro-Brexit, you're clearly living in some sort of alternative reality. And look, you could make the argument that the BBC was essentially the government's mouthpiece during the pandemic because it didn't really work to question any of the lockdown policies. But that's not what these people are talking about. They've had a bone to pick ever since the British public made the decision to leave the European Union and voted in that referendum. Now, it seems these people on the left want the BBC to be explicitly anti-Brexit as our state broadcaster, and that, quite frankly, just won't wash. It's not the government trying to control the BBC. It's people saying, you actually need to do your job and be impartial.
Yeah. I mean, Nigel, to me, this entire self-obsessed speech just showed why Emily Maitlis should never have worked for the BBC, because she didn't want to do impartial coverage. She wanted to do Brexit bashing coverage.
Well, I mean, certainly when I saw that Dominic Cummings thing at the time live, I sort of took a sharp intake of breath, because that clearly was not within the...
It's not impartial.
No, that's right. However, I think we are actually misunderstanding the BBC at the moment, that it's perfectly true that certainly the journalists I know there tend to be liberal-minded and left-leaning.
Yeah, big old lefties. Big old lefties.
I've worked with a lot of presenters...
I'm glad you've admitted that, Nigel.
I've worked with a lot of presenters there whose politics I don't know. I don't know a single presenter's politics. So that part never comes across.
You must have known Maitlis's politics.
I've never worked with
a rocket scientist.
So I don't know. But the important thing is what the BBC tries to do is achieve, despite whatever the individual politics are, achieve balance. And where I do agree with Emily Maitlis and what she said was that as a result of that, you often get a minority view which ends up getting a disproportionate amount of airtime because of the balance they try and achieve. And everyone I've known who works there, and she criticises Robbie Gibb, who I don't think, by the way, is some Tory secret agent sneaking around the BBC.
I wish he was. I really wish he was.
But the whole point is to get this balance thing in, and every so often you end up being imbalanced because there's more people who think one way rather than the other.
Yeah, final point.
I think Nigel is treading down the right line, but I just want to challenge that, for instance. If you look at BBC London, for instance, their coverage is definitely left-wing, has always been for a number of years. There is very little balance there. They don't give the other side of the story. So as much as Nigel is right from a professional point of view, the output has been relentlessly left-wing. And why that's terrible for the BBC's future, the type of person who would enjoy paying the fee is your traditional small C Conservative, and it feels like the BBC has been attacking them for years. The moment the BBC licence fee becomes optional, their income gets halved.
Yeah.
And why is it when left-wing journalists join the BBC, they're just journalists, but when Tories are a part of it, they're agents?
Oh, exactly.
Sorry, I just had to say that.
I mean, it's hilarious. They've basically found one right-wing person. He doesn't even work at the BBC. He's on the board. And all of a sudden, there is a Tory agent infiltrating the BBC. What about the other 99.999999% of staff at the BBC? who are Labour-supporting Ramonas, who, by the way, love reading The Guardian. Always find this fascinating. No one out there buys The Guardian anymore, genuinely. I mean, people go to the website, no one buys the newspaper. At the BBC, most popular newspaper. Says it all. Nigel Nelson, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, thank you so much. Coming up, as Fishy Rishi Sunak claims he was in a constant battle with doomsday scientists over COVID lockdowns, is the ex-Chancellor just desperately rewriting history? He's going to be up for either Greatest Britain or Union Jackass shortly. But next in Uncancelled, can the former Brexit Party turn the energy crisis into a game-changing political revolution? Reform UK's leader Richard Tice unveils his party's battle plan for the global energy war and Britain's future at 10:40. First, though, very quick look at what's coming up in Monday's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, has the ousting of Boris set a dangerous undemocratic precedent? Patrick Stoner of the Alliance of Conservative Voters is live with a solution for angry Tories looking to right that wrong. Plus, I'll meet the British immigrants and Canadian journalists who have exposed the COVID tyranny of Justin Trudeau in court and are being ignored by the MSM. And as ever, I'm joined by my superstar panel, Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda DeLucy. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, the energy crisis is spiralling out of control. The new price cap set to be announced at 7 a.m. tomorrow. And analysts are expecting it to be increased by 80%. 80%. So that means over £3,500. The Labour Party has proposed a radical socialist bill freeze for everyone. But now the former Brexit Party, which is now known as Reform UK, has unveiled its dramatic strategy to liberate us from this crippling global energy war. So will Richard Tice's plan see the party become a genuine challenger to the Tories once again? He joins me now. Richard Tice, what's your plan?
Good evening, Dan. So, look, I think we've got to recognise that we are now in a global energy war. Nations around the world are scrabbling for energy like we used to scrabble for PPE. And the government needs to declare what's called force majeure. The UK energy market has failed. It's no longer fit for purpose. And when you're in a warlike situation, Dan, you have to adopt a wartime response. What the government needs to do is to say the market has failed. We, the government, we will take control of the pricing of energy production. What that actually means is that by law, all of the producers of energy, extractors of gas, producers of wind farms and everything, in the UK, they will have to sell to UK retail suppliers at the average price that they received last year in 2021, when they made reasonable profits, but they didn't make windfall profits. What that does, Dan, and this could go on for many, many years, this crisis is not a matter of months. Unlike the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Tories seem to think, this is a global crisis. It could go on for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. Who knows? We need a proper plan that lasts that long, and that's what our plan does. That would mean, Dan, that the cap could come back down to about £1,750. You need a bit of extra help for targeted for the vulnerable, but crucially, it enables a cap for business at around 35 pence per kilowatt hour, and that then actually transforms the whole situation. You dramatically reduce the rate of inflation, you protect the most vulnerable, the elderly, you protect consumers, you protect businesses, and that then reduces the need to increase interest rates.
OK, well, we've had a good look at your plan there, Richard. Can we talk about the raw politics of this now? Because obviously, Reform UK, previously known as the Brexit Party, you made a massive political impact and significantly changed government policy and perhaps the future of this country as well. Do you view this as another Brexit-type moment? Is this a big enough policy issue for millions of folk around the country to become potentially disillusioned?
To be honest, Dan, this is the politics of this, frankly, this is way bigger than politics. This is existential to the UK. It's the gravest energy crisis since the Second World War. We need a plan, and we need it urgently in September. There's so much involved with this. But if we don't sort this out very, very quickly, Dan, we are facing...
get all of that.
We're facing recession.
I understand all of that. I understand
The politics are we're the only people with the courage to tell it as it is to the British people. There's been a massive failure of the market because of incompetent politicians over the last decade and incompetent civil service, to the point where I think gross negligence is involved. We used to be an exporter of energy. We're now reliant on the goodwill of people selling to us.
But is
when we're
this
sitting
a
on a
big
pile
enough
of energy
issue,
treasure?
Richard, to shake up the British electoral map at the next election? Because in reality, that's what your party needs, right? In order to change the country at all.
There are two major crises at the moment. One is the energy crisis, which links into net zero, right? They're all intrinsically linked. That then links into the cost of living, because energy drives the cost of living. The other crisis we've got at the moment is, frankly, our borders have also broken down. Our border force is not fit for purpose. We are literally facing an invasion from Albania. I'm the guy that broke the story on the front page of the Mail on Sundays, you know. People have been talking about barely anything since. Tragically, this situation is going from bad to worse to disastrous. And I think those two things
think, Richard, just
be the big issues of the next election.
Completely. They are huge three issues. I completely agree. Energy crisis, net zero, invasion of this country. Absolutely. You think it could see you beat the Tories in certain seats at the next election?
Look, we're going to be standing in 600 seats. We think we can have a significant impact. We think the British people are tired of two-party politics. We want proportional representation. We think people want to vote for change. They've had enough of this style of government that, frankly, has brutally, expensively failed the people. And it's time for change, Dan.
OK. Richard Tice, thank you so much. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel are back. Dominique Samuels, you're got a nominee for Greatest Britain.
Mine is Novak Djokovic for standing up for bodily autonomy and refusing to be bullied into taking the vaccine.
Sean Bailey, your Greatest Britain nominee.
My Greatest Britain nominee is GCSE students who received their results today. The first students to sit exams since 2019. They did us proud.
And Nigel Nelson, your nominee.
With apologies to Richard, it's Keir Starmer for having the only credible policy to bring energy bills down by freezing prices.
On what planet?
I'm going to go with Sean, actually, because the problem with these poor GCSE students is this is generation COVID. They have had the worst last couple of years. How on earth they've been expected to set these exams? Of course they have to, but they've been let down. They've been let down by the system and by our politicians. Union Jackass, time now. Dominique Samuels, your nominee, please.
Mine is Boris the buffoon for swanning to Ukraine instead of swanning to Dover and witnessing the invasion that's currently going on his watch.
Sean Bailey, your Union Jackass nominee.
My Union Jackass nominee is Nicola Sturgeon for saying how Britishness is a key part of her when she spent so long separating the rest of Scotland from the Union and denying young Scottish people their British roots.
That's completely bizarre, isn't it? Saying she's British.
It's hypocrisy in the highest.
Yeah, indeed. And Nigel Nelson, your Union Jackass nominee.
And mine is Rishi Sunak, who didn't have the guts to resign in 2020 if he really believed lockdown was wrong.
Oh, my goodness. Look, it's not often that I would turn down an opportunity to make Nicola Sturgeon our Union Jackass. But to be honest, I am going to go with Nigel Nelson tonight. I genuinely believe, I know lots of folk are ignoring this interview, lots of parts of the mainstream media are, but the shocking revelations in that Rishi Sunak interview with The Spectator, where he admitted that he disagreed with the lockdowns, that he knew they were morally wrong, that he knew they were scientifically unsound, yet he let them continue for 2 years, damning us to what is now a cost of lockdown crisis. I genuinely think it is one of the biggest dereliction of political duty and moral duty, actually, in recent memory.
My first win on your show, Dan.
Is tonight's Union Jackass. You've won, Nigel Nelson. Have a brilliant weekend, by the way. Nigel, Sean Bailey and Dominic Samuels, you have a brilliant weekend too. I'm back again on Monday from 9 p.m. Good night.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office.
Clearer for many and feeling cooler as well overnight and into tomorrow. Rain or showers expected in some western parts, but otherwise largely dry. The heavy and thundery rain we saw earlier on Thursday moving away, and with clearing skies, for many it's a fresher night to come. More comfortable for sleeping, I think. But for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, we keep a lot of cloud. There'll be some outbreaks of rain or showers into western Scotland overnight, as well as Northern Ireland, and then that turns up into West Wales as well as Cornwall by dawn. Otherwise, under the clear spells elsewhere, 10 to 13 Celsius, or even into the single figures in some sheltered spots. So a fresh start to Friday. Plenty of sunshine, mind you, across much of central and eastern England, northern Scotland, and it remains the case as we head into the afternoon. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud extending from eastern into southern Scotland, western England, Wales and parts of Northern Ireland. And within this cloudy zone, there'll be some showery rain and some heavy downpours for southern Scotland and the far north of England. Temperatures at around average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s in the north, low 20s to the mid-20s further south. Now, the showers across many western areas will slowly drift their way northeastwards through the evening. They'll eventually fade away, but that's where the cloud will remain. Otherwise, plenty of clear spells for the start of the weekend. And a cool start for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Single figures fairly widely, mid-single figures in some sheltered spots. And we're looking at low teens further south. But Saturday starts off with sunny spells for many. There will still be a few showers remaining through the spine of the country, I think. Central parts of England into East Wales. Some of these showers will develop as we head into Saturday afternoon. But away from the showers, there'll still be some sunny spells, increasingly so through Sunday and Monday, and it'll feel warm in that sunshine.